All right, we are now on lesson 1-5. That's chapter 1, section 5, and it is subtraction. So it is going to be very much like addition. You will have to use place value. You'll have to know the numbers in the place value system, and then just like the addition problem, working on the right hand side first and going to the left. However, here you may have to borrow and that is a big deal. So we're going to go through the reading and the directions. This is page 12 and page 13. You're going to do numbers 1 through 8 on page 13 when done. So let's begin here. If you have $4 and you spend $3, then you have $1 left. In this subtraction example, $1 is called the difference between 4 and 3. So unlike addition, they have the two numbers called the add-ins at the top. This 4 would be an add-in, this 3 is an add-in, and the sum would be the answer to an addition problem. Well, here we just have the answer to a subtraction problem, and it's called difference. So when you see the word difference, you know that you're subtracting. You subtract two whole numbers by subtracting the digits place by place. And I underlined this in the addition as well, and I'm going to underline it here for subtraction. Again, you're going place by place. Every number has a decimal. All of our work today is whole numbers, so the decimals on those are to the right. And not that you're going to put decimals in your answer, but at least you know where to start. So you now know over here in our work, 7 and 6 are in the ones. Then you're going to go to tens and so forth. So subtract 885 minus 57. One thing I forgot to mention in the addition problem, they have it written right here. This is what I would call horizontal. Okay, I'm not going to spell out the whole word just because I'm writing with a mouse, but that is the horizontal. And you need to put it in vertical format, which means you're stacking on top of one another. So vertical here, getting close. And that way you can subtract a lot easier. Same thing with addition. So I forgot that if anything's in horizontal, put it in vertical format. So back to 885 minus 57. We're going to start subtraction. You always start in the upper right hand corner at the top. And we're going to start with this 5 right here. You cannot do 5 apples minus 7 apples. You just don't have enough apples to take away. So you're going to borrow from the neighbor. Now notice they crossed off the 8 and they put a 7. In theory, you're actually borrowing a group of tens. And what I mean is, as soon as you cross this 8 off and put a 7 up here, you have 75. And you can see that the 5 is right there. However, we're going to add that group of 10 to the 5, and 10 plus 5 is going to give us this 15 that you see right here. That's why they cross off the 5. So again, you cannot start off with 5 apples, take away 7 apples. There are not enough apples. And again, you have to always start on the top right-hand corner. So you go over, you cross off the 8, you're going to borrow a group of 10 or one digit, and that makes it a 7. And 10 plus 5 makes 15. Or in other words, you've seen people attach a 1 to their 5 to make 15. 15 minus 7 is 8. All right, so that is the ones place value done. Here's our 8. Now remember, we had the 7 replacing the 8 in the tens column. So 7 minus 5 is 2. Now we do have 7 apples and we can take away 5 apples. So we do not need to borrow here. 2 is our answer. And finally, when you have 8 apples and you're taking away nothing, you're still going to have 8 apples. So your answer is 828 to 885 minus 7. That's example 1. Example 2 is 903 minus 256. Again, this is in horizontal format. You're going to want to put it in vertical format. So we are going to subtract from the ones column. Again, every number has a decimal. We would know this if case decimals were in there. But when they're stacked like this, we know that they're the ones column. So that's why it says subtract the ones. Now, again, 3 apples minus 6 apples, starting in the top right-hand corner, you cannot do. Now, I cannot borrow from a 0, and the reason you cannot borrow from a 0 is there's nothing to there to borrow. So now you are going to go to the next column, which in this case is the hundredths column, and you are going to borrow from there. So you borrow, take 1 away, which they did here. That's going to become an 8. And the 0 now becomes a 9. And then I'll explain that in a second. And then that group of 10 that you borrowed, 10 plus 3 is 13. So let's do 13 minus 6. That gives you 7. Then I'm going to come over here. Here's 13 minus 6, 7. We have a 9 here, and I'll explain why you have a 9 here in just a second. 9 minus 5 gives you 4. And then finally, remember you had that 8 in its place, in which now they move over to the hundreds column. 8 minus 2 is 6. So your answer is 647. Now back to this 9 here. If I wrote out the numbers 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All right, please watch what happens. Okay. If I borrowed 1 from 9, it would become an 8. If I borrowed 1 from 8, it would become a 7, right? If I borrowed 1 from 4, it becomes a 3. If I borrowed 1 from 1, it becomes a 0. Now, I could not borrow from anything that's not home. You see the 0? There is nothing to the left. So you're actually going to go all the way to the end, and you're going to put that 9 again. And that is why you have that small little 9 in this tens place. So let me repeat. You could not do 3 minus 6, so we had to borrow. We could not borrow from 0. So we borrowed from 90. Now, another way to look at this is take 1 away from 90, and you get 89. And that is how you get that 89 there. Excuse me. So 2 ways. You can box that all in. 90 minus 1 gives you 89. Or just remember, you cannot borrow anything. And therefore, you're going to start, that 0 is going to become a 9. Okay, you are doing numbers 1 through 8. I'll do number 1. 7 minus 6, it's pretty simple. Now remember, I have my decimals here. That just reminds me that all of these are in the ones column. That gives me 1. And 2 minus nothing is 2. So number 1 is pretty easy. Couple of these get tricky. You are going to have to borrow, so just do your best. You are not going to do this, and you are not doing that. If you're in class and need help, raise your hand. If you're online at home and need help, don't be afraid to email me, and we'll get some help to you. Okay, you may begin.